Hey everyone, I'm Piero, and I'm absolutely super happy to be here. I'm honored to be sharing the stage with some of the people I admire the most in the community. Talks have been one of my main ways to learn, and it's thanks to all the knowledge that the MacAdmins community shares that I've basically built a career out of this and out of my love for Apple. So I always thought it was like impossible for me to do a talk, and yet here I am, thanks to a fantastic supporting community, which is really something special. Um, Also, thanks to Matt, who, after having me as a guest on the podcast on a few book club sessions, did not have enough of me and thought it was a good idea to hear more about this Italian KanBan fanboy rambling about boards and agile. So, thank you, Matt. I am really grateful. I can buy you a KanBan free beer soon. So, this talk is a gentle introduction to Kanban and its principles. If you don't know what Kanban means, no worry, we'll cover that. It's a talk I wish I had available when I started using Kanban without a clue about what it was and how powerful it actually was. So let's get started. What is Kanban? You may have not known Kanban or called it Kanban, but most of you have met it somewhere, either for work, your like usual Jira nightmare, or Trello for your more or less complicated project needs, or maybe you've laughed about it when you watched an episode of Silicon Valley. So, Kanban and boards in general are seen as a tool to track your work, and often, well, not often, but sometimes to track what you do during your working hours and to make sure that things actually get done in the office, right? So almost everyone hates Jira, and I kind of feel that this feeling translates to the tool as well. And I think that this is a bit unfair because I think Kanban is a really great tool. But a little bit of history. So where does Kanban comes from? It's a Japanese manufacturing system. If you like, it sounds Japanese. It's probably Japanese. You'd be right if you think about it. It comes from from Toyota actually, and it's specifically one of the pieces of the renowned Toyota production system, praised all over the world for being able to manufacture to an incredible high quality standard just in time. I mean, Toyota cars are notably reliable, right? Or it used to be. I don't know about them anymore. I haven't driven a car for the past 10 years. So it's a manufacturing system regulated by an instruction card passed along the line. So I hear you saying, what does this has to do with Max and DevOps? Who cares about car manufacturing, man? We're like production lines. Well, turns out when you hear about DevOps and lean and agile and all those fancy words, when you start digging into this culture and this philosophy, they're all strict direct descendants from Toyota and their production systems. But that's probably a subject for another talk. What I want to make sure here is that we talk the same language. Um, Kanban means many things. It's the card that moves on the board, it's the board, and it's the system. I want to make sure we all talk for the next 10 minutes the same language. So I'll put the keyword aside, as cool as it sounds, and I want to look at how it works. So for the next 10 minutes, I'll call boards board and cards card. So we don't get confused, and I'll try not to mention Kanban at all. So how this actually Kanban works. We're going to look at how you can use it to visualize the flow of your work and optimize it through the use of working process limits and the pull system. For the purpose of this talk and this specific section, I want to switch to an app called Miro, which is just a whiteboard collaboration app, which is very cool. And I think it just works a lot better to demonstrate this. So I've put together a few different examples of boards. So let's start from the basic, right? When you when you have a board, we try to map the journey of a single piece of our work with a card from inception to completion across the columns, which resemble as close as possible our process. Cards move from left to right, But you could also go back sometimes, probably not back to to-do, but you can also move them back sometimes, based on their state until they're completed. Once a card is completed, we've finished our work with that card. And at the very minimum, you would have a list of to-do and a list of things that you've done. And this is perfectly fine, right? We don't want to overcomplicate things unless we need more complexity. If you want to track what actually is being done in a specific state, in a specific instant in time, you can have a doing column, which represents what you're actually working on. The most important thing is that you decide what these columns are. This is a very, very customized process and approach. The board fits your process, not the other way around. So for example, if you have as a requirement that everything has to be reviewed, maybe your team writes a lot of code and you want to make sure that you get peer review on all your code, you can have an additional column that says feedback, which is to cover that specific step of your process. Or you could have, as I mentioned before, a blocked column to move cards back, so you can go, you can bring more work across. What makes boards super powerful to me is how much information they convey at a glance. Because you're tailoring this to your process, you can immediately tell with precision what's being worked on in a snapshot of time. Things like bottlenecks and process gaps and things that you should look at, they immediately become super, super evident. I've built a couple of other examples. So let's look at this. This is a very simple board. We're not looking at additional steps in the process. It's pretty much a to-do list, things they're doing and things that have been done, right? The first thing to do here is observe that what I think is a great data point. We've uncovered a potential bottleneck. Because we only deliver value when the work is completed, by not completing any work, we're not delivering value at this moment in time. This looks like a very busy team who's working on lots of stuff and parallelizing a lot of work, but getting very little done. So how do we approach this? We now have this piece of data, and we want to understand first, why are we working on all these things at the same time? And also, why are we not finishing work? Why our value delivery to the company and to our customers is stuck? One of the most common ways that Kanban implements is limiting limits. So you can only do so many things at any point in time, and we call it limiting work in progress and work in process. Work in process is its definition is whatever is between to do and done. So in this case, all this bunch of stuff here. And what we do is actually we say, no, we only can have 2 work in process items. Once this is finished, it moves to done, and we pick something else. By doing this, we force ourselves not to look at any more work until what we have already taken on is completed and the value that is provided to our customers. A limit also forces us not to work on many things in parallel, which is quite bad because of how much time and energy gets lost in switching contexts. Once the work is back to what we consider the limit, we can take a new piece of work using what is called the pool system, which is exactly what I did before. We complete this piece of work and we pool this other thing. And this again, we create some space to pick up more work. We use our team's prioritization criteria to decide what we start next. You and your team know better what is best to pick up next, what is the most important thing for your team, for your company, for your customers. One thing that I want to add is that there are infinite customizations that can happen on your board. The most famous one is swim lanes, which is basically horizontal separators, which are normally used to separate context. So in this case, I've made this example with an emergency context. So this could be a VIP emergency, or this could be an incident, or this could be something else, a project, and a daily, which could capture your operational work. You can implement limits here. I am not personally a huge fan of swim lanes, but this is because I have never had the necessity to actually implement them. They never made sense to have in my in the process that I go through. So limiting whip and pooling work can be a bit counterintuitive, but there's a wealth of information about how parallel work is really, really not the best way to deliver continuous value to your customers. So I'm gonna switch back to the slides now. And we've taken a quick look at how boards can help us visualize work, deliver value at a sustainable pace, and constantly review our priorities. Every time we pull something, we're reviewing the backlog. We're reviewing and asking ourselves the question of what is our most important thing to do. And now I think this wouldn't be a good presentation if it wouldn't end with a few tips and tricks. But because I am, I don't want to make this a prescriptive way. I don't believe in silver bullets. I think we all should take our tools and adapt them to our work. These are some of the things that actually work for me. Track absolutely everything. That Slack message that took you 30 seconds, yes, it's going to take 30 seconds to track. You want to track it. You want to have visibility of that. You want to have data. That's super, super, super important. Track the work, not the people. We don't care about who's doing what. What we care about is delivering value to our customers. And not the only way is if we stop looking at who's doing what and more of, in a whole way, what the team is doing to deliver value. Value, transparency, and honesty. When you're tracking everything, it's easy to fall trap of those metrics and gaming them and making them look great. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You want to foster a culture of experimentation and failure. You want to see those things like bottlenecks and process gaps, and you want to fix them, because only by fixing them, you continue to grow and get better and increment the value that you can deliver to your customers. At the end of the day, Kanban's job is to make problems come to the surface. These are the words of the person that invented Kanban. So if you think about it, like, we can only this is really the core of Kanban, making your work visible so you can make it better and improve it overall in an iterative process. When I approached the DevOps world, I thought this was a niche for nerds. But what I found instead is really sensible and really good advice based on what I end up calling common sense. It goes beyond boards. The more I explore this world, the more I read about it, the more I'm convinced that DevOps is, at its core, continuous improvement. Improvement of our processes, improvement of our tools, and most importantly, improvement of us as people. We can only improve if we get good quality feedback through many, many feedback loops, and use that feedback to iterate until we get close to get it right for that specific moment, because this will always be a moving target. And that's why DevOps for me is a journey where there's no right or wrong. There's only what works for you, what works for your team, what delivers value to your customers, what makes you grow as a human being. And Kanban has been super helpful, a super helpful tool for me as I go down this road. And I hope with this talk, it can start bringing you some value as well. Thank you. I'll be in the QA channel for any questions. And I've put up some slides and resources at this address. I'm going to post the slides and the notes to this as well.